right, everybody. So thank you so much for joining this show this evening. Again, all the gratitude in the world, everybody who follows along. I appreciate you so much. Already having a few people commenting. So Joseph Morroy, thank you so much. Oh, snap. That's right, brother. That's how we do it, man. We get the party started around here. So appreciate you guys. If you're watching the show for the first time, you can catch us streaming live on just about every single social media channel. So if you're watching us on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram, and on Instagram we do a little bit different. We do a separate stream, and it's more of a intimate sort of feel for people who are watching on Instagram. It is just pretty much watching me talk. So if you want to follow along on Instagram, you're more than welcome to. I do appreciate it. So, but again, you can check us out at MFSB Live on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can check out our YouTube channel, and that is at www.youtube.com/made from scratch broadcast on YouTube, guys. So if you're watching us there, do us a big favor, hit the like and subscribe button. We are always trying to build our viewership there. And again, we appreciate you guys so much for following along. And of course, we are streaming live on our favorite platform, or my favorite platform, and that is LinkedIn. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, guys, thank you so much for connecting, and appreciate the people already commenting and following along on the show. So let's get this thing rolling and introduce our guest for the evening. Oh, come on, if I can just pull it in. This is the fun part sometimes, guys. It's about pulling in the technical part, which is always fun. But here he is. Welcome to the show, guys. Mr. Andrew Deutsch. Thank you for doing. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no problem. No problem. So, one of the things that I love to do is connect with different people. And the first time that I kind of got connected with you was after watching Russ Johns, seeing you on his show.
Oh,
and yeah, so I kind of reached out, and I would see that you were pretty active a lot of the times in his stream there. So I love to connect with a lot of the same people, a lot of the same communities, because most of those people, they have they really have a really good quality about what they do, and they're pretty genuine most of the time. So when I had the opportunity to say, hey, do you want to come on? You were like, yeah, let's do it, man. Let's put a show together. Let's get this going. So for those who might be a little bit unfamiliar, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do there at Fangle Tech, and what was the story behind getting all that started? Just walk us down a little bit down your own path, man.
Sure, I'll give you the short version. So yeah. I went to school for global trade back in an era when very few of us were in that world. And graduating from school, had gotten an opportunity. I grew up in Ohio, was living in Orlando, and realized that back in those years, every MBA I knew was unemployed. And without an MBA, there wasn't much of a career space. So I decided to go back to school and studied to create a different resume, more of a psych background. So I worked as a therapist for a period of time while I was building my business practice. And the idea was, how do you build marketing strategies around the psychology of people in multicultural environments to be able to really grow business? And through that, started to do all sorts of projects in Central America. And one day was it 1993, I was asked to go down to Brazil for 90 days to work on a project, and ended up living there for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So it was the Brazilian market had just opened for import. It had been a dictatorship prior, and then they impeached their president, and the new president was in. And I did if I stay in the States, I'm a guy who knows what he's doing, sort of, among a lot of people. And in Brazil, where people didn't have the experience because the market had been closed, all of a sudden I was a genius, even though I wasn't. Right? It's a matter of change zip codes, change perception, I guess. So we built a solid business of helping American companies set up distribution and look at viability of their products and manufacturing for the South American market. And we grew that business for many years. In about 2003, I moved back to the States and continued to operate in both locations till the market crashed. And one of my biggest clients said, hey, we really need you to reorganize our international division. So for the first time in, 15 years, I had a job instead of running my own business.
Yeah.
So, and we basically put me on the road. So I took on a position with a company that was doing about $3 million in, I think it was 12 or 13 countries at the time. And in 5 years, grew it to about 14 million in 75 countries. So, which meant I was in the air 300,000 miles a year, 45 countries visiting, 200 and something days on the road. And really, I mean, you'd wake up, you didn't know what country you were in. You'd have to look at that little book in the hotel room to go, oh, I'm in the Philippines.
You live with jet lag.
It took me, after I left that job, it took me almost 4 years before I got a sleep schedule again.
Oh, wow.
What time it was. But I also got so unhealthy. I think when I quit, I was about 365 pounds and decided I wanted my health back and I wanted my family back. So I dropped 160 pounds and shifted careers again, working in marketing and sales projects for companies, which led me getting back into a private consulting company, which was the birth of Fangled. So we developed a process of getting embedded with companies, either for a major project or as what we call fractional chief marketing officer programs. So a company that doesn't need a 5-day-a-week C-level executive, but also isn't going to benefit from somebody who's just knows SEO tools and some, how to use the tools, but not build a strategy. So we're able to set up as part of the company, almost as if we're a part-time executive within a company, handling that strategic, total research, planning, branding part of that business in a way that you wouldn't get with someone who's just fresh out of school and doesn't have that experience. And then we also help companies do, global expansion.
Wow, that's pretty cool, though. I mean, it took a little while to get to that point, but once you find that, again, that for a lot of people, kind of like what you said, a lot of businesses really can't afford that. Or really don't want to have that on staff, right? They don't want to have a full-time C-suite executive there to sit there and kind of just fill space. And
well, they shouldn't. They shouldn't. But the goal of every project that we do, because I make this comment on day one, and some people take it in the wrong way. We're not parasitic. So it's not we're not taking on a position part-time in a company because we want to be there forever.
Right.
We want to grow that business to the point that they could afford a guy at that level and need a guy at that level, and we help them hire and replace us. It's rare that we would take on an engagement that would last much more than a year to 3 years, because the idea of what we do is we're free. We don't cost anything, because if you invest in what we do, you're going to make 100-fold on that investment in the growth of your business.
Right. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Is how much do you believe in it? How much, are you willing to invest in your own future, in your own company, and wanting to see, like you said, so much so that you can actually, hopefully one day bring somebody on to handle that workload and actually have a workload for them to handle,
Well, and a lot of times it isn't even necessarily that they're going to grow so big that they're going to hire a C-level guy. But when a company can go back to its core and really look at its brand, understand who is their customer and what are the pains and difficulties that they have that this company can solve, and you build a go-to-market strategy on that, now you have a foundation for the company to grow. Now it's time to look at the tools.
Yeah.
So if we're able to get that go-to-market strategy executed and start the growth, then they may not necessarily need somebody at that level that's building strategy. They need someone to be able to implement and grow with a solid foundation that we built for them. So then you can get a guy like someone who's got maybe a few years marketing experience to come in. We train them and coach them and get them up to speed, and then maybe once a month, once every 6 months, we come in and make adjustments.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna ask you. The kind of the next thing is that how much of this when you put into creating these roles or doing these sort of things, is it where you have to kind of go in and keep a kind of like a refresher, right? Come in and always, because again, all this stuff is always constantly changing. It's never something that stays pretty much stays the same. It's all because again, social media, technology, marketing, everything. There's always more advancing tools. There's always new programs. There's always new stuff that's coming into the market. So that's cool though that you do that.
Yeah, but the tool thing is really the key to this conversation, because everybody thinks about all this great tech and tools. You're using this great streaming format.
Yeah.
Some guy who doesn't know what he's interested in talking about, doesn't know how to engage someone in conversation, grabs this set of tools. How long are people going to watch that show?
Exactly. Yeah.
So unless you have an intent and you have a plan and you have a goal of what you want to do with that tool, it's like having a shop full of woodworking tools and only knowing how to work on metal. It doesn't make sense. And the challenge that we have in the market, and I would say today, 90% of our new engagements are people who've been burned by agencies that are tool houses. They come to you and they say, hey, I want to help grow your business. We make the most beautiful websites in the world. We can drive 100,000 people a day to that website. We get you all excited with these numbers. By the way, we can do LinkedIn coaching for all your executives, so you can all have 30,000 connections. And then you go, hold on a second. What am I going to do with all of that? We're in a niche market. There may be 1,000 total customers in the world who could buy our product. What am I going to do with 30,000 connections and 100,000 people? Is my new job filtering through 100,000 people to see if there's one I could do business with?
Yeah, I mean, how much is that? How much is that actually going to equate to actual closes and business?
Yeah. So. And by the way, we can make you a cool logo, because I got a guy who makes cool stuff. Although it probably won't have anything to do with your brand story, it'll be cool.
Right.
So the focus has to be, who is your customer, or who are your customers, and what are their needs, what are their pains, and how do you differentiate in a way that they care about?
Yeah, that's what it essentially on the most simplistic level. That's how it always comes down to. Doesn't matter what product is and what it is. It's just knowing who, what, and why. That's always been a lot of why successful businesses can stay successful, because they always can figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Most companies don't know their customer and they don't know how they differentiate from the competitors in the market. And if they do, they don't know which one of those differentiators actually matter to their customer.
And it's funny to think about that. They probably have huge budget meetings. They go through all this stuff, and it's still a mystery. I mean, how? Oh, I don't know. That's just crazy to think about for me.
It's so common, and a lot of times, until somebody gets that aha moment of, oh my God, I didn't realize that this thing we've been bragging about as the core principle of why people do business with us, our customers don't even care about that. Or, imagine that we're selling cars.
Yeah.
Okay? So we go to market and we tell everybody, well, we make our cars out of steel. We've got 4 tires on every car that we sell, and those are rubber. And we've got glass in the front to keep your face dry. These are all, features of the car. None of them matter. You can't make a car without doing that. Maybe you can make a plastic car, I guess, but the features, people don't buy that. What they want is, you'll have the guy whose persona is, I want a car that's just going to make me look really popular with girls. And I want the power. So when he buys a car, he wants to know, will the car push him back in the seat?
Yeah.
When I hit that gas pedal, am I going to do this? I want it. And then you've got the guy who's safety conscious. So to him, the story of safety, how you make the safety and what those features are, is how you prove it's safe. But at first, he wants to know it's safe.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of methodology that just gets missed so often.
Awesome. So let's dive a little bit different.
Sure.
Go down a little bit different path. One of the things that kind of interested me, what you were just saying a while ago, was the fact that while you were jet setting and going to all these different locations, you figured out that you wanted to get your health and your family back. What was that like? What was that journey like again from carrying that much weight? Because again, in trying to change your whole sort of living and lifestyle, because I've gone through similar processes myself. When I started this year, I'm right at this point, I'm about 50 pounds lighter than what I was. So, getting down that process, what was it for you that was that light bulb that said, I have to do something to change who I am, or I don't know how much longer I can take this and live like this, because it can be frustrating and it can be a lot of things.
There's a lot of, there's always the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah.
In the story, but I would wake up in the morning in the hotel and not know where I was, like I said before. And it was creepy. And I would miss events that my kids were involved in. I'd walk up to the counter at the hotel speaking the wrong language because I just confused. You walk up a flight of stairs and you're exhausted and you're like, what the hell? So I'm on a flight from Mumbai to Newark, 16 hours. And the plane took off. I had to go to the bathroom. I went. There's a whole story behind that. I get back to my seat. My headphones had fallen off the seat. Bend over to pick up the headphones. Rip. Crotch to waistband on my pants. 16 hours to go in the flight with my back end out for the world with a bunch of people pointing and laughing. And I went, F this. I'm done.
Wow.
And I sat down in my seat and I turned on my notebook computer and I started rewriting my resume. And when I got back home, I said to my wife, even if a shift to a different company means less money, I need to be home. And proceeded to write the best resume I ever wrote, did a total analysis of all the accomplishments that I had so that the resume would focus on that rather than just a bunch of tasks. And started talking to my network of people and said, who needs a guy who knows the global market? Who, the skill set that I built was so strong from all of my years, the multiple languages and everything else. And it took me about 3 months. And then I went out to with the boss for lunch and I said, I'm leaving. Yeah. Wow. It was, the embarrassment was the final straw, but there was a whole build up to that moment.
Right. And it takes it sometimes, like you said, it takes that moment to get to where you're like, I really gotta change. Right. I cannot go on at this pace because if I do something, I know something bad's going to happen. And, of course you see it all the time. People who, contract diabetes or they contract, other health-related issues because of weight, and it kind of gets spit on by certain things that probably.
And I dropped I was about 160 pounds total, and then gained back some, which was the plan. In about a year and 3 months.
Still, that's wow. It's a whole nother person essentially.
Yep.
So that's not the easiest thing to take care of. So let me ask you another question about what are some of what would you say are some of the more creative things that you've had to do to help a business grow or expand that that has been a little bit unorthodox? Have you ever had to come up with some sort of
hundreds how much time you get? Down in Brazil, I was working for a company that was manufacturing airless painting equipment. What airless does is for building your house, you want to paint the house. Normally it's rollers and brushes. This company has equipment that pressurizes the paint to 1,000+ PSI, and with a pistol creates a fan, and you can paint buildings with it for a higher speed. In the U.S., almost every high-quality painter has them in their kit. In South America, they just didn't exist. So we started talking to customers in Brazil about it. They said, "Oh, we know about that. It's garbage. It's bad. It doesn't work." Or, "You know how cheap labor is here. We don't need it." But we really did believe that there was market. So we started asking the question, well, you're saying that it's bad. because you've actually operated it and it doesn't work, or you just hear it's bad? And that was the question, was starting to ask the right questions. So we decided the paint companies didn't want to talk to us. The painters didn't want to talk to us. We hired 2 painters and we trained them. And then we set up, there's a supermarket chain in Brazil that's owned by the Portuguese called Carrefour. And because of the security issues, every parking lot has these massive walls that go around it. So we bid on the job for the new Carrefour that was supposed to take a crew of 12, 2 weeks to paint. And we bid on it with our 2 painters. And we completed the job with a whole dog and pony show with the news and everything in 2 days.
Wow.
And then the pitch to the paint companies were, do you recognize that my crew of 2 consumed more paint in 2 days than any 3 companies consume in a week? Don't you want to get involved? So one of the paint companies agreed, and we set up a school. So if you're a painter in Brazil and you want to be certified for using our equipment, you could come to the class for 3 days, no cost. And if you graduated from the class, you got 10% off if you bought the equipment within 30 days. So we went from a market that had sold maybe $20,000 worth of equipment to about a $4 million market in less than 18 months.
Wow.
It was the old stagecoach and the train competition.
That is, hey, I gotta say that's pretty unorthodox. Most people, but that's what I like about when I talk about people being creative. People again get misnomer that creativity is with a paintbrush or a pen or whatever else. And I tell people, no, creativity goes way beyond just doing these things. So if it's, again, I tell someone, if you create coaching programs, if you've created a sales program, if you've done these things, that's part of also being creative as well. Because again, some of the best ideas are from people who think outside of the box. So that's pretty cool. Another thing that interests me is you talk quite a few different languages. Have you ever been somewhere and heard people speaking one of these languages, kind of know they didn't expect you to know?
I'll give you 2 stories.
Okay.
They're both pretty bad, but they're okay for prime time. Okay. So I was in the process of moving back to the States from Brazil, and I wanted to get a U.S. cell phone.
Yeah.
I was at a Best Buy in not a rural area, but outside of Cleveland, where you wouldn't expect people to be speaking Portuguese. And I'm talking to the sales guy because they had at the Best Buy, they had all these different phones they had different operators at the time. I think this was, I don't remember the brands, but they had the different ones, and I'm asking them about it. And I hear out of the corner of my ear, there's 2 Brazilian kids. One of them's talking about stealing the phone because he can send it down to Brazil and make money. Of course, they're dummy phones.
Yeah.
Not real, but he doesn't know that. And his buddy's going, no, you're going to get us deported. Our parents will kill us. Because these Americans are so stupid. There's no security here. They're never going to know. And I turned to the salesman and I said, can you give me just 1 second? And he said, okay. And I turned to the kid in Portuguese and said, you really ought to listen to your buddy. I'm the head of store security. It was like the Roadrunner. Beep, beep. The only thing that was missing was the swirling cloud of dust when they ran out of the store. And then, of course, the sales guy wanted to know what I said. I said, you don't want to know. That's one.
That's awesome, though.
There's a better one. This was, so remember, I used to be really big. So I'm sitting on a bar stool at a Holiday Inn in Brussels, in Belgium, and there's no other place to eat anywhere near this like office park. There's a Holiday Inn Express and a Holiday Inn, and the guy next to me is from Scotland, and he's on his way. He's an engineer in the petroleum industry, coming to help plug. Remember when we had that huge leak in the Gulf of Mexico of oil?
Yeah.
He was the guy that was hired to come and fix it. So I'm fascinated by everything. I'm having this conversation, learning about why you can't just plug the hole and the whole bit. And the 2 Brazilians, not thin, but also not as big as I was, sit down next to me at the bar. Now remember, this place is packed.
Yes.
So I'd ordered my food and I'm talking to the Scottish guy, and the bartender comes by and throws my plate down in front of me and takes off because he's got there's all these people. And the woman says to her husband in Portuguese, this fat pig gets his food and I can't even get an effing menu. So again, I turned and in Portuguese said, if you just wave your hand and get his attention, I'm sure he'll give you a menu.
Wow. And then,
Well, she goes, oh, you don't get it. It's just a joke between my husband and I because nobody understands Portuguese. I said, I know somebody who does. And I turned around and just went back to the conversation.
that is funny because I
The
love
air
that.
left the room.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So that's why it's always fascinating because I have a friend, right? And he speaks very good Cantonese, right? Um, and we've been into a few. This was years ago, but we would go to a few Chinese restaurants, right? And you hear them talking, and you don't know the language, so you don't know what they're saying. But um, he was actually close enough within earshot to hear two of the cooks in the back kind of arguing, and
Mm-hmm.
he just starts breaking out laughing, right? And he's sitting there, and I look at him, I go, man, what's going on? And um, he says, well, one of the cooks just said that he dropped his cigarette butt in somebody's food, and he doesn't know which order it went out in. And I was like, oh no. I said, let's leave right now. I don't want to get my order. I'll come back another day. So, but again, they're literally saying this out in the open, and it's one of those things you can kind of see through into the back of the kitchen where they're saying this out in the open. Of course, they don't expect nobody to know that somebody can understand what they're saying. And they, hey, I dropped a cigarette butt that I just had in my ear, and it fell in somebody's food, and I don't know where it went. So,
at one time, I was dating a woman who had gone to school in Japan,
oh,
and we went to this place that was all you could eat sushi.
oh.
And we sat down at the sushi bar, and the sushi chef turned to the waitress, looking at me, and said, "We're going to lose money on this guy." And she stood up and read him the riot act in Japanese. He bowed, took off. A different chef came, and we never saw him again.
That is priceless to see that whenever somebody doesn't expect that, right? And again, that's part of where you spent the time to go and going to different countries, going to different places, taking in different cultures. So, how does let me ask you this, because I always ask people who've lived in foreign lands or whatever, how do they perceive us as as Americans? How do they perceive us in the West? How do they perceive people that who are living in a country like that? And I know they have their opinions. It's always piqued my interest.
It varies depending on, and I don't want to get in a political conversation, but it depends on what's going on in our country at the time. So if the U.S. is really thriving and doing trade and in peace times, it's a very different feeling that you get from folks. I mean, I went from having a thriving business and great relationships in Brazil, and then after 9/11, and then after the Axis of Evil speech, it became dangerous. There were attempts. There was one of the reasons we came back was because we felt like we were now in danger of something happening. That was one of the motivators to come back. Plus, my youngest was ready for school, and I wanted to go to an American school. But it really depends where you are, and also the leanings. Like when I was going down to Venezuela on major projects, as Chavez was taking power and destroying the country, we were kings. And then if I was in Bolivia, they hated us because the Bolivian politics were tied to this return to an agrarian, non-industrial situation. It really depends, and it's not. There's no blanket. It's nice when you can have black and white answers to stuff, but it's a real gray area. I'll give you an example. I was hiking with some friends in Peru, and I got hurt. We were at 15,000 feet top of a mountain. I had to get back to go to the hospital. So I left the guys hiking and had to find my way back, asking for rides and whatever. And I was in local transportation, and in the vehicle. So you can imagine I'm in the car. I can barely walk because I hurt my hip. And this is the locals taking the vans that take them from town to town.
Yeah.
Normally tourists aren't in there. and I'm talking to them about life on the farm, and it looks like a postage stamp from Peru, the way they're dressed and otherwise. One guy's got a chicken, the other, she's got a baby on the back. And when I speak Spanish, you can tell that Portuguese came first. So they were asking me if I was Brazilian, and I said, no, I'm American, but I learned Portuguese before Spanish. And they go, oh, thank God, we hate Brazilians. Why? They're so loud, so rude. They went through this whole thing. The only thing they wanted me to do was to teach them how to cuss in Portuguese at Brazilians that they didn't like. And we made friends, and I've got photos of the people I met, and but that was what they were interested in, because they had that perception. I lived in Brazil for years, 10 years, and their perception of Brazilians was solely based on the really, really wealthy who could afford to travel to go to Machu Picchu and hang out in that region of Brazil, of Peru, and they don't necessarily behave the same as most Brazilians. It's that sort of elitist class. So depending on their exposure, changes.
Yeah, and again, it's funny that you say that, because again, I've had a couple of shows on where we talk about systemic racism and that sort of thing, and a lot of the times it's about class warfare, right?
Yeah,
in a way that people see one side or the other. So it's funny that, again, you talk about that, because it's prevalent everywhere. I don't think that's kind of one of the things that me and my partner talked about, was the fact that just doesn't happen here in America, right? It's not just an American problem.
No.
It's a huge problem everywhere else, because again, it is even people in their own countries, their own sects, and even down, like you said, in South America, they have those sort of biases towards other countries. And again, that's funny that you talked about that, because
in political systems, depending on whether you're moving towards an authoritarian regime or not, typically when a government moves more towards that authoritarian, they have to have a boogeyman.
Yeah.
If there isn't an enemy, you don't need a strong man.
Exactly.
So what's going on? You're in Texas, no?
Yeah.
So think about what most Americans know about Mexico. They know Tijuana. They know the border. They know what's happened in Juarez when the cartels took over. They don't know Mexico. They've never been to Guanajuato or these other places where just beautiful jungle and the coast, and they don't recognize here they're supposedly these very religious people. In Mexico, the structure of the family, the reverence to whatever sect, usually the Catholic folks. The Mexican family structure is something to be envious of. Yeah. But we created a boogeyman that all Mexicans are that one criminal that
we're coming over here to steal drugs, take jobs, and do all these other things. Again, that's part of where you see it. And I go, it's like you said, it's not a black and white answer. You just cannot go, that's what it is. And of course, that's the easy thing to sell, though.
I get annoyed when I hear someone try to tell me they're not a racist. I don't see color. I want to make it real clear. I see color. I see culture. I see gender. I see all of that, and I'm so glad I do, because it makes life better.
It does, right?
And everything that's different is interesting, and there's no judgment in saying something's different.
That's the whole point of having all these conversations, is that learning and understanding different is what it's all about. Because again, even in our own country, even in our own societies, even people who are quote unquote Caucasian, there's levels of that, right? There's people that say, "Oh, well, don't mess with them. They're poor white trash."
Yeah, like, I've been everywhere, and I've never been a place where I didn't meet good people. I have friends in Islamic countries. I have friends in Hindus and all of these different people. They're all wonderful. The only ones we hear about are the ones that make the news.
Exactly right.
Do we judge all Americans based on a terrorist that blew up something? No. We judge Americans because we're here on the folks that we care about.
Yeah. That's true. That people judge us on who Ted Kaczynski was, and
Yeah.
all these people were, they're just they're terrible. They're all
a bunch of Unabombers.
Yeah. So,
but the reality is, all the travel I've done, the one piece of advice that I give somebody, if they have an interest in doing global trade and traveling the world like I did, if you don't love difference, stay home. You're not gonna do a good job.
Right. Get ready for culture shock.
Yeah. You're going to eat weird stuff. You're going to see weird things. You're going to smell stuff you wish you hadn't smelled, and you're going to learn a lot about the world.
Yeah, but again, that's what it is. We're all this. When everybody talks about the whole global society, and everybody and everything in every single culture has something different. And, even America, right? A lot of our cultures and a lot of things that are ingrained in what we do, they're all from other cultures.
Yeah.
We're just a melting pot of everybody and everything else.
Yeah. Answer this question. What's the typical American dinner? I get asked that question all the time. And my answer is whichever way the wind's blowing.
Exactly. And that's what it's about. So, Andrew, let's get to the magic question. This is the question I've asked every guest that comes on the show. So here it goes, folks. So when the book is said and done on you, Andrew, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind, and what is the one thing you want to be remembered for?
It's one of my favorite questions because I don't think about it. It really, I live the life hoping that my kids will be even better off than I was, and be more interested in the world than I was, and that if people are going to remember me, hopefully they'll remember me for being kind and interested in them.
Man, and again, that's why I tell everybody that comes on here, they kind of really, sometimes the question can throw them off, and I go, there's no wrong answer. This is not a right or wrong answer. It's just, I love to hear other people's thoughts and perspectives, because one answer is the same. I've done 150 of these almost now, and I've never had anyone that said the same exact answer as somebody else, and that kind of speaks to our individuality and how we
I just launched. I've been debating as to how to do something different in the podcast world. Just launched my podcast yesterday, so I've got two up. And the one question that I always ask when I interview anyone at the end of it is, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
Ooh.
That's always every time I've done it, there's something somebody wanted to share it, and I was ripping them off because I didn't ask the right question.
That is a very good, thoughtful, insightful question. That's the money question for you, man. I love that.
Yeah, because the interview is about them, not about me. So if there's something pent up in there and I haven't asked about it, they go home feeling like they got ripped off. I came to tell my story and you never asked.
Yeah, what is going on there? What's wrong with that? That's good. That's a good, again, that's a really good question. It's very insightful, and it kind of puts them in that kind of that thought process a little bit, like, hey, man, you should have asked me about this, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's once you get off the air and it's hindsight, it's 2020. I could have figured that out. So that's a good one to bring to the table. That's good.
And as long as they don't answer, you didn't ask me about how you could learn how to Bitcoin mine, I'm good.
All right, so don't. That's the one answer I don't want, but I love that. So thank you, Andrew, so much for coming on the show, man. It was a really good conversation. Good luck on the pod. Excuse me. I got the thing I'm going to put up here in the comments, and then I'm going to put it down in the comments below. What is the name of the show, and how often, or do you have a kind of a schedule in place as far as how you're going to start releasing more episodes and that sort of thing?
You can find it on YouTube or on all the Anchor puts it everywhere. If you want to see the video version, which is the more interesting, it's called The Fangled Cast, and it's on YouTube on the Fangled Cast page. And then Anchor puts it on Spotify and I think CompuServe and Prodigy and MySpace.
Hey,
I think they even fax it to you if you have a fax.
if you ask for it. Hey, I actually did that the other day. I love to kind of comment bomb some people's live streams, and I frequent more of the live streams that are about the tech part of what we do and that sort of thing. But I was asking somebody about they were talking about excuse me, how to set up like using a separate software in your live stream, right? They were talking about the whole process. So I just pretty much asked out of a dumb question, say, hey, I want to stream using my Commodore 64, but I'm having problems. Can you guys give me any tips to help me figure this out, right? And I said, I think part of my problem might be my dial-up's a little bit slow. So I literally just went like to all these old school terms. So when you said
my TRS-80 blew a fuse.
When you started saying CompuServe and Prodigy and all these other stuff, that's why it really just took me back to that moment. So
we were fine until you just told people how darn old we are.
Well, we are old, so deal with it, folks. This is part of what we do. And again, let me pull it just real quick.
Sure.
Go in the comments so people can see. Oh, come on now. I hate sometimes when it takes a minute to load.
I was talking to a guy the other day, and a pizza delivery guy showed up in the middle of the call. And I asked him, I said, can you email me some of that? I got a 3D food printer I just installed. And the guy went, really? No. That's how I'm inventing for Zoom dating. We're going to have a 3D perfume printer so you can smell each other while you're talking. Make it feel like you're on a date.
Oh, that would be different.
I don't know what the hell you'd want it for, but it's fun to joke about.
There, though. So, all right. Here we go, folks. I'm 62, so there's the YouTube in case you are interested, folks. And then I'm going to put it in the comments as well. And you can click the link, guys. You can check out the Fanglecast as well. So if you pull it up in there now, it is a link. It is active. There you go, folks. So, well, come on now. Oh, gosh. This is the killer. I'm trying to put it into LinkedIn so it'll pull up in the LinkedIn comments as well.
Oh, okay.
Because LinkedIn has it. That's the one thing about LinkedIn that kind of drives me a little bit nuts. And it drives Russ as well, is because LinkedIn does not have their API is not open, so you can't we can see comments, right? So, but we cannot we can't actually post responses into the comments there section there, which would be nice. I would really love that. So here you go. It's in the comments now, or it should be. Let me pull it up here.
Cool.
There it goes. So there's the link there as well to the YouTube channel on LinkedIn, guys, that Andrew has, the Fanglecast. Check him out. Check out the podcast as well on Anchor. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on the show. Had a really good time. Had a couple of really good laughs as well. Really good stories. And Russ is saying yes. Smell-o-vision. That is. Smell-o-vision was again. You get to that point where technology can actually do that. Now you're talking, right? Now you're talking a whole new level of connection.
There was a Roger Waters movie back in the 80s called Polyester, and they gave you a scratch and sniff card for the movie.
Yes,
it was called Odorama.
I slightly remember that. Yes.
Each smell was worse than the next.
So, thank you so much, Andrew. Sit tight, everybody else. We will be back here tomorrow evening, 7:30 Central Standard Time. And of course, tomorrow will just be a solo show. I kind of like those a little bit as well. So everybody stay blessed, stay safe. We'll get through this together, and I will see you tomorrow night. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody.